It's Henry Third History, and welcome to our next Vice Presidential Series installment. And we're taking a look at the 39th Vice President, Spiro Agnew. We have a lot of really cool stuff to tell you about Spiro Agnew, but first, hit subscribe down below, leave all your comments, questions, drop a like, and give us a thumbs up, and hit the little notification bell. And now we're going to take a look at our 39th Vice President of the United States, Spiro Agnew. And this is Dead History.
Hey guys, how's it going? TJ back with you here at Dead History, and here with Henry, the star of the show. He's replaced me. He introduced the whole thing by himself. Awesome job, Henry. Great job, buddy. You did great. So there you go, the star of the show. You don't need me any longer. We've always been hashtag here for Henry anyway. So here we go. As Henry said, our next Vice Presidential Series installment, and we're taking a look at the guy behind us, the 39th Vice President of the United States. What's his name?
Spiro Agnew.
Spiro Agnew. So, cool things to tell you. Agnew, born in Maryland, not far from us. He's got a very, very modest little gravesite. Where do you see it? Of course, I visited it. And it's, I mean, you wouldn't even know there's a Vice President of the United States buried there. It's unbelievably modest. You can miss it so easily. I'm going to show you all that, of course. Agnew, definitely surrounded by a lot of corruption in his political career. We're going to tell you all about that, right? A lot of corruption. Of course, he was Richard Nixon's vice president, but a lot of corruption, a lot of things happened, and that changed. Yeah. So we're going to get into all that about Agnew. Unfortunately, Spiro Agnew, according to a lot of historians, really, when he did die eventually later in life, kind of died almost like a disgraced man. Kind of a forgotten man. Somebody that, you know, history wasn't going to be too kind to. But we're going to dive into all aspects of Spiro Agnew and tell you all about him. So, they did the likes, they hit subscribe, they did the comments and questions, notification bell, thanks to you, of course. Now, Henry, what do they got to go get?
Go get the popcorn, the pretzels, the
potato chips, Doritos. I mean, come on now.
Potato chips.
All of it. Not Lucky Charms. Apparently, Lucky Charms are making people sick lately. Seriously. Yeah. Oh, crazy, right? Apparently, they're not magically delicious. So, but go get your snacks. Go get your drinks. Because here we go. Our next Vice Presidential Series installment here at Dead History. Thanks to the great introduction by Henry alone. And here we go. Sit back, relax,
and enjoy.
Hey guys, how's it going? TJ here with Dead History, and welcome to our next Vice Presidential Series installment as we're taking a look today at the 39th Vice President of the United States, Spiro Theodore Agnew. That's right, Spiro Agnew, number 39 already. Can you guys believe it? I certainly cannot. I am flying solo for the audio portion here. I hope you guys enjoyed Henry's debut as doing a solo introduction to start us off for this video. I think he did a wonderful, wonderful job. So big kudos and shout out to Henry. Wonderful job. Very proud of him. Yeah, so Spiro Agnew, number 39. And guys, believe it or not, I just want to touch on this. It's Agnew this week. It's Rockefeller next week. And then guess what? That's it, except for Walter Mondale. And yes, I did decide I am going to do a Mondale video. Please keep in mind that Mondale was cremated. So there is, at least as of now, as far as the general knowledge to the public is concerned, there is no, there's no interment site. There is no grave site to go visit for Walter Mondale. So it will be kind of a unique video I'm doing because we'll do our normal, going through his life and his legacy. but there's not going to be any gravesite for me to show you pictures of, which is, I believe that's going to be a first, an actual first here at Dead History. So, but I did want to touch on that. So, the way this looks and the way this is shaping out is it looks like we should be, unless barring something unforeseen, we should be ending our vice presidential series on Friday, May 13th. Yep, Friday the 13th. Looks like it will be the part 2 of Mondale release. And then the plan is we're going to have a couple of live streams happening in May. I will be doing a live stream with Dr. Thomas Balcerski, where him and I are going to be grading all of the vice presidents. So we're going to do a vice presidential grading video, Thomas and I. And then I'm going to have another live stream with Kurt Dion of kurtzhistoric.sites.com. And him and I are going to be grading the vice presidential grave sites, just like we did with the presidential grave sites. So 2 grading live streams, which will be a lot of fun. And then there may be something here in June, not sure yet. But Henry and I are definitely going to take some time off with baseball and just life in general. And then we will announce our next series and when that is going to start. But you'll have to wait and see when that's going to be. So there you go. You guys are all caught up to speed. And let's do this. Let's jump right in. This part 1 today. We're going to take a look at the early life and the political rise and basically leading all the way up to the vice presidency for our 39th vice president, Spiro Agnew. So let's jump right in. Here we go. A little over a week ago, I took a rather unusual step for a vice president. I said something. Spiro Agnew. On November 13th of 1969, Vice President Spiro Agnew became a household word when he vehemently denounced television news broadcasters as a biased, unelected elite who subjected President Richard M. Nixon's speeches to instant analysis. The president had a right to communicate directly with the people, Agnew asserted, without having his words characterized through the prejudices of hostile critics. Agnew raised the possibility of greater government regulation of this virtual monopoly, a suggestion that the veteran television newscaster Walter Cronkite took as an implied threat to freedom of speech in this country. But Agnew's words rang true to those whom Nixon called the silent majority. From then until he resigned in 1973, Agnew remained an outspoken and controversial figure who played traveling salesman for the administration. In this role, Spiro Agnew was both the creation of Richard Nixon and a reflection of his administration's siege mentality. Early years. The son of a Greek immigrant whose name originally was Anagostopoulos. Not exactly sure. It's a very Greek name. Spiro Theodore Agnew was born in Baltimore, Maryland on November 9th of 1918. Anagostopoulos, I think. Anagostopoulos. I think that's the way you pronounce it. It's a very Greek name, of course. He attended public schools and went to Johns Hopkins University in 1937 to study chemistry, before transferring to the University of Baltimore Law School, where he studied law at night while working at a grocery and an insurance company during the day. In 1942, he married a fellow insurance company employee, ELINOR ISABEL Judy, known to all as Judy. Drafted into the Army during World War II, he won a Bronze Star for his service in France and Germany. He returned to school on the GI Bill of Rights, received his law degree in 1947, practiced law in a Baltimore firm, and eventually set up his own law practice in the Baltimore suburb of Towson. Remaking his image. Moving from city to suburb, Agnew remade his own image. When he recalled the ethnic slurs he suffered about Spiro while a schoolboy, he now called himself Ted and vowed that none of his children would have Greek names. Agnew similarly changed party affiliations. Although his father was a Baltimore Democratic ward leader and Agnew had first registered as a Democrat, his law partners were Republicans and he joined their party. In 1957, the Democratic County Executive of Baltimore County appointed him to the Board of Zoning Appeals. In 1960, Agnew made his first race for elective office, running for Associate Circuit Judge and coming in 5th in a 5-person contest. In 1961, when a new county executive dropped him from the zoning board, Agnew protested vigorously and in so doing built his name recognition in the county. The following year, he ran for county executive. A bitter split in the Democratic Party helped make him the first Republican elected Baltimore County executive in the 20th century. In office, he established a relatively progressive record, and in 1966, when nominated as the Republican candidate for governor of Maryland, Agnew positioned himself to the left of his Democratic challenger, George Mahoney. An arch segregationist, Mahoney adopted the campaign slogan, "Your home is your castle. Protect it," which only drove liberal Democrats into Agnew's camp. Charging Mahoney with racial bigotry, Agnew captured the liberal suburbs around Washington and was elected governor. It came as a shock to Agnew's liberal supporters when, as governor, he took a more hardline conservative stance on racial matters than he had during the campaign. Early in 1968, students at the predominantly African-American Bowie State College occupied the administration building to protest the rundown condition of their campus at a time when Maryland essentially ran separate college systems for black and white students. Instead of negotiating, Agnew sent the state police to take back the administration building. When the students went to Annapolis to protest, Agnew ordered their arrest and had the college temporarily closed down. Then in April, when riots broke out in Baltimore following the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Governor Agnew summoned black leaders to his office. Rather than appeal for their help, he castigated them for capitulating to radical agitators. "You were intimidated by veiled threats," Agnew charged. "You were stung by epithets like Uncle Tom." Half of the black leaders walked out before he finished speaking. "He talked to us like we were children," one state senator complained. The incident dramatically reversed Agnew's public image, alienating his liberal supporters and raising his standing among conservatives. Spiro who? On the national scene, Agnew formed a committee to draft New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller for president in 1968. In March, during his weekly press conference, Agnew watched on television what he expected would be Rockefeller's declaration of candidacy. Without warning, Rockefeller withdrew from the contest, humiliating Agnew in front of the press corps. Rockefeller later jumped back into the race, but by then, Agnew had moved toward the frontrunner, Richard Nixon. When polls showed none of the better-known Republicans adding much as Nixon's running mate, Nixon surprised everyone, as he liked to do, by selecting the relatively unknown Agnew. Spiro who? Asked the pundits, who considered Agnew unqualified for national office. Despite such doubts, Nixon saw much promise in his choice. "There can be a mystique about the man," Nixon assured reporters. "You can look him in the eyes and know he's got it." Nixon expected Agnew to appeal to white Southerners and others troubled by the civil rights movement and recent rioting in the cities. Attention shifted from this issue during the campaign, however, when Agnew made a number of gaffes, including some ethnic slurs and an accusation that Vice President Hubert Humphrey, the Democratic candidate, was soft on communism. Agnew also encountered allegations of having profited financially from his public office, charges that he flatly denied. Agnew's biggest problem was that he seemed so ordinary and unremarkable. A tall, stiff, bullet-headed man and the sort of fastidious dresser who never removed his tie in public. He tended to speak in a deadening monotone. Whether he helped or hurt the campaign is not clear, but in November, the Nixon-Agnew ticket won a razor-thin victory over the Democratic candidate Hubert Humphrey and the independent candidacy of Alabama Governor George Wallace. On August 8th of 1968, at about 1 p.m., Richard M. Nixon went down to the ballroom of his Miami Beach hotel to talk to the press for the first time since winning the Republican Party's nomination for the presidency. The room was buzzing with anticipation, as everyone expected that Nixon would use the occasion to announce the name of his running mate. Smart money was riding on either one of Nixon's two defeated rivals for the nomination, New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller and California Governor Ronald Reagan, or on longtime Nixon confidant Robert FINCH. When Nixon announced his choice, Governor Spiro Agnew of Maryland, the press was stunned. As Nixon walked out of the room without taking any questions, several reporters cried out, "Spiro who?" The son of a Greek immigrant, Spiro Theodore Agnew attended Johns Hopkins University and Baltimore Law School before his education was interrupted by World War II. He married Ellen Judafine in 1942. During the war, the couple eventually had 4 children. He served in Europe as a captain in an armored division. He received his law degree from Baltimore in 1947 and began a law practice while seeking a career in politics. A Republican in a heavily Democratic state, it took until 1957 for Agnew to secure his first official post, an appointment to the Baltimore County Zoning Board of Appeals. 5 years later, in a surprising upset, he was elected Baltimore County Executive. The Baltimore Democratic Party spent much of Agnew's tenure planning to unseat him in 1966. Recognizing that re-election was probably out of the question, Agnew began to sound out Maryland Republican leaders about a run for governor. He was not given much of a chance, but no other Republican wanted the nomination. Agnew once again won in an upset, thanks to the rabidly segregationist stand of his Democratic opponent and the correspondingly solid support of Agnew by the Baltimore black community. Agnew's black support helped him earn him a label as a moderate, sometimes left-of-center Republican. Part of this reputation was borne out by events as Agnew put forth a progressive Fair Housing Act and appointed many blacks to statewide positions. However, Agnew's moderate tendencies were not deeply held, as was soon evidenced by his actions following the riots in Baltimore after the April 1968 assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Agnew called some 100 of the city's black leaders to his Annapolis office, and rather than offering them sympathy and help, berated them and laid the blame for the riots squarely at their door. Agnew called them counterwalling, riot-inciting, burn America down type of leaders, and saw to it that his harangue was leaked to reporters in detail. Agnew's response to the black leadership appealed to Pat Buchanan, then working as a speechwriter for Richard Nixon's campaign to win the 1968 presidential nomination. Buchanan reported Agnew's tirade to his boss, who arranged for a dinner with Agnew and Nixon law partner John Mitchell, then serving as Nixon's campaign manager. Mitchell, that is. During the course of the dinner, Nixon asked Agnew if he would place his name in nomination before the convention. Agnew agreed, and Nixon came away from the dinner convinced that the governor would make a good running mate. This was a remarkable stroke of luck for Agnew, who not weeks before had been a supporter of Nelson Rockefeller's presidential candidacy, only to be left behind and embarrassed, literally standing in front of the Maryland press corps about to make a speech of support when Rockefeller announced that he wasn't sure that he wanted to run. Despite Agnew's stroke of good fortune, he was far from Nixon's first choice. Nixon offered the vice presidential nod first to Robert Finch, who, citing the appearance of cronyism, declined. Nixon then asked House Minority Leader Gerald Ford, who also declined in hopes of becoming the Speaker of the House after a Republican victory that fall. Nixon then turned to Agnew, arguing to those in the party who did not know the governor. It was reported that when Nixon told him of his final choice, Ford laughed out loud, that he was a good speaker who had shown courage during the Baltimore riots. Well, I found somebody, a special guest here. Hello, Henry.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. So what's new? Anything?
No, not really.
How do you feel about your first ever introduction debut for Spiro Agnew?
Pretty good.
Yeah, you did a great job. You did wonderful.
Thank you.
So Spiro Agnew, kind of an interesting guy. A lot of corruption. Only the second, I believe. Yes, only the second vice president to resign as vice president. Right?
Wow.
Right? I mean, that's crazy. So pretty interesting stuff. No? I mean, no comment? You're just kind of sitting here with this look on your face like, Oh, there he goes. He left. That was it. Exit stage left or what? I mean, bye. That's it? All right, Henry. Thanks for stopping in.
You're welcome.
All right, see you later.
See you later.
Yet the choice was a carefully considered one. Agnew, like Nixon in 1952, was largely chosen for his appeal to a constituency that distrusted the head of its ticket, the conservative wing of the Republican Party. It is clear that many early supporters of Alabama Governor George Wallace not wanting to waste their vote on a third-party candidate, finally came home to the Republican Party because of Agnew. Nixon also had an important campaign role for Agnew, one that Nixon had been assigned by the head of his ticket in 1952. Dwight Eisenhower, who was anxious to run a campaign that showed him to be a presidential instructed Nixon, he ran a campaign that showed him to be presidential, instructed Nixon to go on the attack, while Ike took the smoother high road. 16 years later, with an equal desire to be perceived as presidential timber, but with Vietnam hovering as an issue that threatened to destroy any candidate who mishandled it, Nixon wanted to deflect as much attention from himself as possible. Thus, the low road was consigned to Agnew, and it was a road that he traveled well. During the campaign, Agnew called Maryland reporter Eugene Oshie a fat Jap, apologizing later, saying that they were old friends. He responded to the criticism that he was not campaigning in many inner cities by snapping that, "When you've seen one slum, you've seen them all." And he accused Democratic candidate Hubert Humphrey of being squishy soft on communism. Nixon's choice had proved to be a masterful one. Far from being embarrassed that Agnew was panned by the press, Nixon was pleased that Agnew's press contingent had doubled before October, thus deflecting attention from the issues of the day. More important, in an election that was this close, Nixon won with just 43.4% of the popular vote. Post-election polls made it clear that, as Nixon had predicted, many conservatives voted for the Republican ticket because of Agnew's rhetoric. Man, Henry, that's Agnew wasn't exactly the nicest guy.
No, not really.
No? I mean, said some pretty awful, mean things to people, no?
Yeah, he definitely did.
I mean, even if it was supposedly maybe a strategy of some sort, I don't really see why or how, but yeah, I mean, he was really derogatory, horrible things that were quite bigot. I mean, really a bigot he was. Not very good. And we haven't even began to scratch the surface of everything with Agnew yet. I mean, we're just getting into it, and we're already seeing this kind of stuff. Not good, right?
Not good, not good, not good. You can't do that.
Can't do that. I agree. Not good at all.
You don't do that in life.
You don't do that in life. You're right. You try to treat everybody with respect and kindness, right?
Yes.
That's right. So, to be honest with you guys, that kind of leads us right up to where we're going to start talking about his vice presidency. So, let me just touch on some more, family background and that sort of thing. Spiro Agnew's father was born Theophrastos Anagostopoulos in about 1877 in the Greek town of Caragileonia. Man, I'll tell you, these Greek names and Greek towns and very, very hard to pronounce. I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure I'm butchering these Greek names and towns. And apparently, because I looked it up, the Greek town is Garigelania is how you pronounce it. But crazy. A lot of very, very Greek names and Greek towns, so I apologize if I'm butchering those things. The family may have been involved in olive growing and been impoverished during a crisis in the industry in the 1890s. Anagostopoulos emigrated to the United States in 1897. Some accounts say 1902. and settled in Schenectady, New York, where he changed his name to Theodore Agnew and opened a diner. A passionate self-educator, Agnew maintained a lifelong interest in philosophy. One family member recalled that if he wasn't reading something to improve his mind, he wouldn't read. Around 1908, he moved to Baltimore, where he purchased a restaurant. Here he met William Pollard, who was the city's federal meat inspector. The two became friends. Pollard and his wife Margaret were regular customers of the restaurant. After Pollard died in April of 1917, Agnew and Margaret Pollard began a courtship, which led to their marriage on December 12th of 1917. Spiro Agnew was born 11 months later on November 9th of 1918. Margaret Pollard, born Margaret Marion Akers in Bristol, Virginia in 1883, was the youngest in a family of 10 children. As a young adult, she moved to Washington, D.C. and found employment in various government offices before marrying Pollard and moving to Baltimore. The Pollards had one son, Roy, who was 10 years old when Pollard died. After the marriage to Agnew in 1917 and Spiro's birth the following year, the new family settled in a small apartment at 226 West Madison Street near downtown Baltimore. In accordance with his mother's wishes, the infant Spiro was baptized as an Episcopalian rather than into the Greek Orthodox Church of his father. Nevertheless, Agnew Sr. was the dominant figure within the family and a strong influence on his son. When in 1969, after his vice presidential inauguration, Baltimore's Greek community endowed a scholarship in Theodore Agnew's name, Spiro Agnew told the gathering, "I am proud to say that I grew up in the light of my father. My beliefs are his." During the early 1920s, the Agnews prospered. Theodore acquired a larger restaurant, the Piccadilly, and moved the family to a house in the Forest Park northwest section of the city, where Spiro attended Garrison Junior High School and later Forest Park High School. This period of affluence ended with the crash of 1929 and the restaurant closed. In 1931, the family's savings were wiped out when a local bank failed, forcing them to sell the house and move to a small apartment. Agnew later recalled how his father responded to these misfortunes. He just shrugged it off and went to work with his hands without complaint. Theodore Agnew sold fruit and vegetables from a roadside stall, while the youthful Spiro helped the family's budget with part-time jobs, delivering groceries and distributing leaflets. As he grew up, Spiro was increasingly influenced by his peers and began to distance himself from his Greek background. He refused his father's offer to pay for Greek language lessons and preferred to be known by a nickname, Ted. In February of 1937, Agnew entered Johns Hopkins University at their new Homewood campus in North Baltimore as a chemistry major. After a few months, he found the pressure of the academic work increasingly stressful and was distracted by the family's continuing financial problems and worries about the international situation, in which war seemed likely. In 1939, he decided that his future lay in law rather than chemistry. He left Johns Hopkins and began night classes at the University of Baltimore School of Law. To support himself, he took a day job as an insurance clerk with the Maryland Casualty Company at their Rotunda building on 40th Street in Roland Park. During the 3 years Agnew spent at the company, he rose to the position of assistant underwriter. At the office, he met a young filing clerk, ELINOR Judifine, known as Judy. She had grown up in the same part of the city as Agnew, but the two had not previously met. They began dating, became engaged, and were married in Baltimore on May 27th of 1942. They had 4 children: Pamela Lee, James Rand, Susan Scott, and Eleanor Kimberly. And then it talks about his time where he went to World War II. By the time of the marriage, Agnew had been drafted into the U.S. Army. You know, we know about that. The post-war years. On return to civilian life, Agnew resumed his legal studies, and he secured a job as a law clerk with the Baltimore firm of Smith & Barrett. So it talks about that, how he became involved in law. Then Agnew made his first bid for political office in 1956 when he sought to be a Republican candidate for Baltimore County Council. He was turned down by local party leaders, but nevertheless campaigned vigorously for the Republican ticket. We know about all that, of course. Then the county executive, we touched on that. And then he became governor of Maryland. From 1967 to 1969, he was governor of the state of Maryland. So we know about that as well. Agnew's term as governor was marked by an agenda which included tax reform, clean water regulations, and the repeal of laws against interracial marriage. Community health programs were expanded, as were higher educational and employment opportunities for those on low incomes. So, I mean, he did some good things, and he ran on a platform of some good progressive things. And then, of course, the riots happened after Martin Luther King Jr. was shot, and we know what happened there. And then he had some trouble, of course, when he called some black leaders to his office in Annapolis, Maryland, and he basically degraded them and berated them, told them it was their fault. A lot of, pretty ugly things there. So I'm not going to go over all of that again because we already touched on it. But that's kind of the gist, and that's going to lead us right up to the vice presidency of Spiro Agnew. So we're going to leave off here. We might touch on some earlier things even tomorrow in part 2, but we'll see. So there you go. That's part 1, the early life, kind of his education, his rise in politics, all the way up leading to his vice presidency of our 39th Vice President of the United States, Spiro Theodore Agnew. So I hope you enjoyed this look. Now, as far as bonus footage goes, I, of course, have been to his grave, but I don't really have much else to show you guys as far as any bonus footage for Agnew. So no bonus footage here for part 1. Part 2, there will be a little bonus footage tomorrow, but that's about it, guys. That's going to do it for this part 1. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much to Henry for his wonderful introduction by himself, solo, today. That was awesome. And thank you to all of you for all the support, all the love, the comments, the questions, all of it. The subscribes, keep it coming. We're over 10,000 subscribers on this channel. We can't thank you enough. It's been awesome. We love it. And yeah, we look forward to tomorrow, part 2, looking at Spiro Agnew as we rapidly come to a close of our vice presidential series. Can't believe it, but it's almost here. Only a couple weeks left. So, thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed part 1, and we will see you tomorrow for part 2. See you then. Bye-bye now.